Hey, what's up everyone and welcome to Daily Code Buffer. In this video, we are going to learn about the unit testing in GraphQL. So in the previous video, we saw that we have implemented the complete GraphQL layer for our APIs. So we created the different sets of queries, mutations and everything for our GraphQL layer. And based on that, we saw that how we can do CRUD operations with GraphQL layer, and we also enable the GraphQL dashboard for our application. So now in this video, we are going to see how we can implement the JUnit unit testing for our GraphQL layer. So mainly we are going to focus on our integration testing part, so we can understand that how we can completely do the integration test for our GraphQL layer. The same way we can do the testing for our service layer and the repository layer. So let's focus on the GraphQL integration testing and let's see what all things that we have to do to implement the GraphQL testing. So this is the same project that I have opened here, that is the GraphQL demo. This is the same thing we did in the last video, that we created the controller layer for our player. So if you can see that this is the controller that we created, and within the player controller we created few different methods. So we created find all method, find one method, create, update and delete method. So these are all the methods that we have created, and for that we also created a service layer where we implemented all these particular methods, and we saved everything in an array list for now. The same thing we can do in our database as well, or any of the non-SQL database as well. And within the array list, at the time of init, we have added all the data here. Okay, so if we check our schema, right, in the GraphQL we have schema created here. So in this schema you can see that we have added all the details about the GraphQL schema, what type of data that we are going to use, the enums, the query that we have two queries created, that is a find all query and find one query, and three mutation types that we have created, that is to create the data, update the data and delete the data. So these are the 5 different operations that we have enabled with our GraphQL. So for all those 5 we are going to create the test cases. So let's go ahead and implement it. Before that, if you see, I have run the application, and if you go to your browser you can see that I have opened the GraphQL dashboard here, and you can see that we have query and mutation. So we have 2 query and 3 mutations available over here. Okay, so for the same thing we are going to implement. So to implement a test class, what we will do is we will go to our controller. So for controller we are going to implement it as we are going to implement the integration test. So for the controller, let's create the test. So I'll go to generate and generate test. So I'm going to create a generate controller test with JUnit 5 and click OK. So here you can see that player controller test has been created, and it is part of the controller package in the test folder. Okay, so here we are going to implement it. So here what we have to do is we have to use the GraphQL test annotation to enable that this class is for GraphQL test cases. So I'll just write this is a GraphQL test. Okay, and what we are testing player controller. So I'll just mention that we are testing player controller dot class. That's it, right? And now what I have to do is I have to have the tester as well. So with what I will be testing our application. So I'll just add GraphQL tester. Okay, so this is the GraphQL tester with which we will be implementing our integration test. So let me just add tester, and I am going to auto wire it. Now we are going to add few methods for our testing. So the first implementation that we are going to do for our player controller is for find all. Okay, so whenever I'm calling find all method, I should be returning my all the player list. Okay, so that's what we want to implement. So let me just write a method for it. Void test find all player should return all players. Okay, so this is the method that I am creating. Make sure that you name the method for which you are going to create the test. So from the name of the method you should be able to identify what this test does. Okay, so this is the test method, that test find all players should return all players. Now whenever we have to implement the test cases for a GraphQL layer, we have to create a document, like we have to create a query, right? So generally whenever, if you go here, right, you have to write a query. So if you see that I am writing, I want to do find all method and I want all these names, right? So you can see that I am writing this query. Okay, so this is the query that also we need to give as a document. So this query we can run it. So basically if I want, I can directly copy this query. Okay, go to my IntelliJ IDEA and I can mention string document equals to string and give this query. You can see how simple it is, right? But basically if you want to write it by yourself, what you do is you do mention that what type of operation that you are doing, that is query, right? If you're doing mutation, then you pass mutation to it. So here we have passed query. You can give the name of the query. Okay, it is not mandatory. If you want to remove it, you can remove it as well. Now within that query, you need to mention what query you are doing. So within the schema, you can see that within the query, what query that you are doing find all. Okay, so you need to mention that I'm doing find all, and what is something that it's going to return, what type of values or the field values that you want to return back. So currently I have mentioned 3 fields. These are the 3 fields that is available. If you just want to pass 2 fields, you can pass 2 fields as well. That's the beauty of GraphQL. So whatever data you want, you can only fetch those data. So currently I'm fetching all the data. Okay, so now this is the query that I have already created. Now I have to write my code. So with the help of tester, I will pass my document. Okay, the document is this document, and then I'll execute it, and then I will add the path, that which path I want to get the data for, and the path is find all. Okay, the name of the query which I want. And then what it's going to do is it's going to return the entity list. So I'll use the entity list method and I'll give the class type, that is going to return player dot class. Okay, and I'm going to check this dot has size greater than. So if you go towards service layer, right? So if you see that whenever I'm initializing it, I am having this 5 players. So I'm just checking that this particular list should have players more than 3. Okay, you can do exact check as well, that I should have only 5 players. That is also something that we can do. And within those 5 players, we can also check that first should be this, second should be this. So there is a lot of different test cases that we can do. But simply for starting purpose, we can see that whenever I'm executing this particular query, that is find all, my data should be the list of players and I should have more than 3 records. That's my requirement. Okay, that's my test case. And if I want to run this, I have to annotate this class with test component. Okay, so once this is done, I can run it. So let me just stop my server and run my test case. So yeah, you can see that something failed, right? So let's see what's the issue. So within the class, okay, so you can see that there's an unsatisfied dependency, because whenever I am starting my player controller, whenever I'm trying to use my player controller, I have used player service as well in the constructor, because I'm passing the player service in the constructor, right? So what I have to do is I have to import this as well. So I'll just do import player service dot class. Okay, now once I do this, this should run. So now you can see that my test case passed successfully. So your first test case is completed. Now let's do the other one. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll go to player controller now, and this is the one that we did for find all. Now let's do for find one. Okay, so let's go to controller test again, and let's add a new method, that is void test, and I'm just writing that as I'm passing the find one, that means I have to pass the ID, right? So I'm just writing valid ID should return player. Okay, this is my test case, so I'll annotate with @test annotation. And here also I need to write document, so I'm just writing string document equals to string. Okay, you can write the document as well here, query. What we can do is we can go to browser, you can remove this, and if you go to find one, I want to pass ID name and team. Okay, so this is my document. I'll just copy this and I'll paste it. So one thing I can do is here I can pass find one to name it better, and this should be taking $ID as the input, right? Because the input that we are passing, and this ID is of type ID. And rather than passing the value here, I'm going to pass $ID here. So whatever the value I'm passing here, that value should be assigned to this ID and we should be using it. Simple, right? So now once this is done, we need to write our query. So with the tester dot document, passing the document, we can do dot variables. So I'm going to pass variable. So what is my variable? Variable is id. So this is the one. Okay, and the value I'm going to pass is 1, and then I'm going to execute it. Then I'm going to use the path to fetch that, and the path is find1. So I'll just copy this and I'll paste it here. Okay, and this should return me the entity, and this entity is of type player.class. And then this entity which is returned should satisfy some suppliers, right? Some consumers, sorry. So I'll be writing satisfies, and I'll take player and I'll add some assertions here. Okay, so I'll just write assertions dot assert rather than assert equals the name, right? So I'm expecting the name as MS Dhoni. Okay, and it should return player dot name as MS Dhoni. Okay, then again assertions dot equals, I'm passing team dot csk, and the player dot team should be also csk. Okay, so these are my assertions. So let's run this, and you can see that it passed successfully. So it's able to run this test case as well. Cool, right? So you can see that we added the 2 test cases, one for find all and one for find one. And now let's add the one negative scenario as well. So this is a scenario where I pass the ID and I am getting the player. Let's do one thing where I pass the ID, and if the player is not found, there should be a test case for that as well. So I'm writing void test invalid ID should return null. Okay, this is a test case. Now let me annotate with @test here, and if I go, I can add the same document here, right? Because this is the same thing that we're going to use for find one. So I'm writing this document here, and now with test method, so you can see that this is the same document, right? So now with tester dot document, I'm going to pass this document, and I'm going to pass the variable as well. My variable is id, and the value I'm giving is 100. I don't have any data with 100 id, right? Dot execute dot path, and my path is find one, right? So let me just copy here, and then I'm going to check value is null. Simple thing. Okay, so you can see that in previous one we took the data back as an entity of a player class, and then we added the satisfies, which takes few of the consumers and test all those things. So we added that the value which I'm getting as a player name should be matching this, the team should be matching this which I am fetching, and it should satisfy the test case. Here I'm giving id as 100 and it should return null. So let's run this as well, and you can see that my test case is passed successfully. So all my 3 test cases are done successfully. Now you can see that we have done all the query part. So now let's go with the mutation as well. So now let's write the mutation part. So we'll write one more test case, that is void test should create new player. Okay, as if you go to my controller, I am now doing for this create. Okay, so this create is taking name and team as the input parameter, and it will create the player, add to the player list, and return the player back again. So this is my test case. So I'll go to player controller test. Here I need the document as well. So I'll just mention string document equals to, within 3 quotation marks, I need to add my query. So if I'll go back again here, I will go to mutation, I'll go to create player. Okay, sorry, I'll go to query, I'll go to mutation, I'll go to create. I am passing name, team, id, name, and team as written. Okay, so you can see that this is my mutation, and it's taking 2 values and all the data I'm getting back here. So I'll just copy this, I'll paste it here. Okay, so I'll give my name of the mutation as my instead of my mutation, I'll give create as well. Now within this, I should be taking 2 parameters and should pass 2 values here. So here I'm passing 2 things. You can see that I am taking name as an input, which is of type string. I'm taking team, which is of type team. Okay, and the comma separated values. Now instead of directly passing the values here, I am going to tell that this should be coming from name here, which is I'm taking as an input, and team should not be CSK, team should be whatever team I'm passing. Okay, and then it should return ID, name and team. So this is your query created. Now using the tester, I'm going to write my code. So with tester.document, I'm going to pass my document, and then I'm going to add all the variables. So first variable is name. So with this name variable, I should be adding a new name. So I'm adding Virat Kohli. Then team I should be adding. So again a variable, and the variable name is team, and I should be adding team dot rcb. I don't have, so I'll go to team and I'll add the rcb team here. Okay, and the same thing you have to add in your schema as well. So in schema you have added enum, right? So here also add rcb. Okay, now you go back, you can see that you have added the rcb. So your variables are assigned. Now you need to execute this, then you need to give path to get the data back. So within the path I have to pass my create, and with path you will be getting entity as a response back. That entity is of player.class, and then this should satisfy something, right? So it will satisfy some consumers. I'm passing some consumers here. Okay, so what I'll do is, I have already done something like this, right? So I'll just copy these two things and I will paste it here. Okay, so instead of MS Dhoni, I added a new data, that is Virat Kohli. So I'll just add here that this should be Virat Kohli, and the team is RCB. Okay, so this is the data that I have created. So I should be testing this. I have to add @test annotation here. Okay, so test should create a new player. So whenever I'll run, it should create a new player, that is Virat Kohli. So let's run this, and you can see that the test case is successful. So whatever the document that we have passed and with all the values, my test case is successful. Now with this you can also add couple of more things. So whatever we have data, that is 5 values in our player list, right, in the service layer. So you can check that I have 5 now. After adding Virat Kohli, it should be 6. So that also we can do here. So if I go to test now, okay, what I can do is I can take the count. So integer current count equals to player service I need, right? So I don't have player service. So what I'll do, I will go to top, I will add a player service here. So player service, and I'll annotate with @autowire, so I can get the reference of it and I can use it. So here I can say I'll do player service dot find all dot size. Okay, so this will return me 5. Before adding a new record, this should be 5. So now once this is done, I can say assertions dot assert equals current count plus 1 should be equals to player service dot find all dot size. Okay, so this is your new assertion. So if I run this, you can see that this is also successful. So that means that I also checked that earlier it was 5 records. After adding Virat Kohli as a new player, now I have 6 records. Okay, so this way also we can do the testing. Now let's do for the update part. So again, let's create a new test case, void test should update existing player, right? Now I need the document here. So what I'll do, I'll just copy this part. I have a document. Instead of create, it should be update. Okay, same thing. And if you go to our schema, in create we were just taking 2 things. Now within the update we have to take one more thing, that is ID. So I'll take the ID here and I'm going to pass ID, and this ID is a variable, so that means I have to define with $ID, and this ID is of type ID. And now I need to take this also. So ID should be passed as ID here. Okay, so I am passing 3 variables. I'm taking these 3 variables in the update mutation and I want to run this. So what I'll do, Again, I'll be using tester.document with this document, and now I have to pass three variables. So the first variable is ID, so I need to pass some ID. Then again variable, this variable is of name. Then again a variable, this variable is team. So if I go to service, okay, within service, let's see that we have Jasprit Bumrah, right, at number 3. So I'll do one thing, that my ID should be 3, my name should be updated Jasprit Bumrah, and team should be, let's move to different team. So I'll just define team.csk. Okay, now he was in MI, so I'm just updating to CSK. So now you can see that all the things are done. Now I need to execute this, and then I need to get a path. This path is update, and the entity should be player.class. So once you run this, what it will happen is whatever the existing player service we have, right? So if I go to existing player service, so whatever the player service we have written here, what it will do is it will fetch the player and it will update the player here itself. Okay, so for testing, what I can do is, once this is done, I can say player updated player equals to player service find one where I'll pass ID 3 dot get. So here I will get the Jasprit Bumrah with the updated value, and now I can do assertions. So I can do assertions dot assert equal, the value should be updated Jasprit Bumrah from where, updated player dot name. Same thing if I copy, instead of name, now I will do team should be CSK now, and updated player dot team. Okay, so once we execute this, the name of my Jasprit Bumrah should be updated Jasprit Bumrah, and the team also should be changed. So now I am getting the same player and I'm checking those values. So I need to annotate this method with @test now, and if I run this, you can see that my test case is successful. So my actual test ran and the value of Jasprit Bumrah was updated with the new player name. Okay, so you can see that how you were doing the integration testing for our actual methods now. So create is done, update is done. Now let's do for delete. So we'll do void, and I'll just name test should remove player with valid ID, right? And I'm going to annotate this with @test annotations, and document I have to write. So again I'll do string document, okay, and I want to write the document. So what I will do is I'll just copy this, I'll paste this, and if I go to schema, it is just taking the ID, it is returning the player, and the name of the mutation is delete. So I'll go to test, I'll change to delete, here, and it should take only one thing, that is ID. I should remove all those things here as well. Okay, mutation delete, which is taking ID is passed here in the delete mutation, and it should return player. Now let's run it. Tester.document, I'll pass the document. Now I'll pass the variable is ID, and the value I'm passing is 3. Okay, dot execute and verify. Okay, so this should be execute and verified. Now what should I do? What should I test? So earlier I had 5 records. Once I remove this, it should be less than 5 records. So one record should be removed. So what I'll do is I will do check here, integer current count equals to player service dot find all dot size. So here whatever size I'm getting, now from the list, that size should be removed, and I should be checking that. So I'll just write assertions dot assert equal current count minus 1. That should be the size of player service dot find all dot size. Does it make sense to you that whatever the size was earlier, once I'm removing it from it, I am getting the same record now. That earlier I had 5, I removed it, now it's 4. So I'm checking that now I should be having 4 records. That's it. So let's run this. And you can see that my test case is successful. So you can see that we were able to test all the different 5 queries, that is 2 for queries, 3 mutation for the entire curl operations for our GraphQL. So this way you can implement the integration testing for your GraphQL layer in your Spring Boot applications. You can see that it's really easy to implement a GraphQL layer, and it's even easier to implement your test cases for your GraphQL layer. As usual, I will add the link to everything in the description below for you to check out. And if you have doubts regarding any of the things that we have covered, then do let me know in the comment section below. So I will see you in the next video. Till then, happy coding. Bye bye.